First they say they want you, gee, how they really need you. Suddenly you find you're out there walking in a storm. And when they have you, then they really have you. Nothing you can do or say, it's time to leave, just get away. We all know that song. Well, my introduction to next, what's this called? Taping of My Life in the Legion of Christ, and we must be at, my goodness, tape 23. Holy mackerel. And here we're going so nicely along the way. I couldn't help but follow up on the last one kind of quickly here because I got very moved by what I was saying. And I hope that's not like the sign of utmost narcissism. He's embellished with his own verbosity. So hopefully, let's do an act of humility here or something before we continue. But as I think I was onto something there, that's why I didn't let it go. I couldn't let it go, even though I had to take a break. As I was saying, leaving the Legion, of course, could have been a relief on one side, but on the one hand, but on the other hand, at that time, it was a great loss. So I was totally alone at that moment, and alone, I'm telling you, good. Alone can be good. Don't be afraid, because that's where I'm going to find myself again. You're going to find your real self because you have no more defenses, you know. So so now you might say I hit rock bottom. I hit bottom, as they say in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm going to be walking along the bottom for some time. I'm not going to try to surface immediately and pretend nothing had happened. Or and what I was considering was that the song therapy may be a way of avoiding all the defense mechanisms that spring up in us after we've had this kind of a tremendous explosion and, as we say, loss, uh, tremendous defeat, a tremendous crisis. But then naturally our defenses are going to kick up. And we're talking, of course, psychoanalysis, we're talking Freud, that this is what can happen. So maybe my defense mechanisms didn't kick in. And you're going to see what can happen to those of us who leave the sect, who leave a cult. To those of us who leave the Legion of Christ, you're going to see that the great temptation is, or the trap is to kickstart our defense mechanisms. So I'm walking along the bottom. And in that sense, I'm saying you don't, maybe if you do what I did, maybe you don't deny or repress or suppress all the Freudian defense mechanisms. It may be a way of not resorting to our, as we say, these defense mechanisms. Now, um, something came to mind here very interesting, which in the Legion we were always singing these songs. I remember when I came in, I was singing songs, and I learned these Mexican songs, which were actually originally love songs, and Maciel had transformed them into religious songs. There are very many. Uh, for example, me llena el corazón de rosas frescas por el cariño que en el alma llevo y lo traigo hasta aquí. Oh, singing in Spanish, excuse me. Mexican love song. And Maciel changed the lyrics in that. Now, what I'm going to suggest to you today for your consideration is that Maciel distorted my song therapy by changing the lyrics and so stay in his super ego. All right? And therefore, he is in his defense mechanisms. You've got to imagine that Maciel is a very depraved kind of a person, so his id, as Freud would call it, all his dangerous impulses are very much there, very much present in him. So what I'm suggesting to you today is that in Maciel there's a battle between his id and his super ego, and maybe his ego, which I'm going to construe now as the balancing force inside us. I may not be very Freudian here, but I'm kind of doing this. Okay, we'll just see what's happening here now, and let me just give you a little inkling into what I'm talking about, and let me tell you that, thank goodness, when I left the Legion, I was not without tools. And thanks to a very good friend of mine at the School of Faith, and her name is, my goodness, it'll come to me now in a moment. Okay. Uh, she was the one who introduced me to John Powell, Jesuit father, John Powell, and I read his books avidly during my stay at the School of Faith. And Marie, I'm not going to say her last name, but maybe she'll hear this today and know that I'm acknowledging her and thanking her for all the good she did to me. So I was introduced to the books of John Powell, who is a Jesuit priest, a fundamental theology teacher in Loyola, which must be in the original Loyola University in, where is that? Somewhere in the South, excuse me, St. Louis, I think. And he was also very good. He was very deep into psychology, so he had a wonderful way of presenting his themes. And basically, he was the one who wrote the book on fully human, fully alive, which is a kind of a motto which I have liked very much. And this is what he tried to do. He tried to educate Catholics into being fully human and fully alive. And in this book, in one of the chapters, Why Am I Afraid to Tell You Who I Am? He breaks down, shall we say, the Freudian mechanisms in a very easy way. Now let me say, one of the first ones he mentions, and this is not so well known. It's not one of the common ones, like suppression, repression, and all that kind of stuff. Denial is very well known. This is one called reaction formation. So take note, reaction formation. It's not what it sounds like, but anyway. The reaction formation which we are considering here is an overcompensation by exaggerating or overdeveloping certain conscious trends. It is developed as a defense against unconscious tendencies of an opposite or unapprovable character. Now, so this I'm thinking Maciel here in the background, but could be some of us too. Okay, but he's a very clear example of this. See, the id, which is all those unapproved tendencies, right, which threaten to break into conscious recognition. He gives a little example here. Very, very interesting. Extremely dogmatic people who are absolutely sure of everything consciously cultivate the posture of certainty because of demoralizing doubts in their subconscious mind. Their self-image isn't strong enough to live with these doubts. People who are overly tender, for example, to the point of exaggerated sentimentality, are usually suspected of assuming this attitude in compensation for harsh and cruel tendencies they have repressed into the subconscious mind. Further example, prudishness is an exaggerated form, in an exaggerated form, is usually an overcompensation for repressed normal sexual desires with which the prude cannot live in comfort. Oh no, I would never do a thing like that. The person who seems to exert an exaggerated concern for the health, this is tough stuff. The person who seems to exert an exaggerated concern for the health of an aged parent probably does so to compensate for the subconscious desire to be freed of responsibility for that parent by the death of the same. So this is very tough in the present circumstances that we're going through this epidemic. Go gently here, but let's apply this to Father Maciel, and it'll give you further inkling into his personality. And that was just my insight of the day here. There you go. What's happening here? The projection. It's not the projection. Excuse me. It's called the reaction formation of doing, kind of acting to the very opposite to what you are. And this, we got this in the Legion because Maciel, who was a depraved sexual addict, we might say, a sexual predator, a serial sexual abuser of minors, which was his specialty, shall we say, along the pedophile spectrum. He goes to the other extreme. He demands from the Legionaries an extreme purity and chastity. And not only that, his conscious mind, right, his superego will demand that of all the Legionaries and of all the senoritas and young men consecrated to the Regnum Christi. Isn't this? It's kind of incredible, isn't it? I mean, if what I'm saying is true, how about this for some little bit of a reflection and a meditation? But at the same time, a liberation. That's what I'm here for. I'm your liberator. Not the liberator of the Americas like Simon Bolivar, but the liberator of legionaries and former Regnum Christis. But you got to follow me. This is not this is not the quickie solution, please, brothers and sisters. No, this is going into it, going through the pain. Not jumping out of the pain. Oh, I spiritualized it immediately. Oh my God, now I'm a mystic. No. Let's stay here. Stay with me. Okay? And no, let's go through the pain. Isn't that what Jesus did? Father, if possible, that I may not drink this chalice. There's the pain. There's the suffering. There's the crisis. There's the failure. God, but not my will. What my will? What's your will? That I go through it. No easy way out. This is it. This is a Christian way, of course. Not the pseudo Christian way. Not the, spiritualized projection into the stratosphere. No. This is, for me, this is the real thing. Take care now. Continue to take care. Our feet are on the ground. We're coping with an epidemic. This is what we're doing. We're taking care of ourselves. We're not, we have to use all our practical now, our practical qualities and strategies to overcome this. This is not, I don't make this a spiritual problem. I make this a human problem, a biological problem that we have to confront and overcome with a lot of patience, forbearance, calmness, trying not to react